Hey guys, this is Dan from Area419 and DR Long Range Concepts. Been seeing some questions on the internet regarding density altitude and proper setup of Kestrel, execution in the field, etc. So I thought I'd do a quick how-to video on how I use the technology and help me get hits and matches. Alright, perfect. So what we've got here, we've got my Databook and we've got a Kestrel Applied Ballistics. This is the newer Elite model, and I'm just going to go through a couple of step-by-steps here. Keep it stupid, simple, stupid, right? So first thing that you've got to do to use this Kestrel properly is just understand a little bit about it, understand what you're doing. So first and foremost, the Kestrel does a great job of tracking environmentals. But what it doesn't do is track muzzle velocity. And that's why I've got my Databook open here to the way that I track muzzle velocity. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about it. This is just a simple chart that I made in Excel. And as you can see in the lower right, I've tracked the temperature that I shot in and the muzzle velocity that I pulled off of my magneto speed chronograph. And if you look there, I just made a simple chart and plotted those points on a graph. If you were going to try to figure out what my muzzle velocity was at 70 degrees Fahrenheit, for example, I don't have a known data point, but you can look by the chart here and see that I'm about 2790. So pretty simple to figure out, and that 2790 is the first thing I'm plugging in my Kestrel in the field, right? So Kestrel tracks muzzle velocity, but it does not track, or it tracks the density altitude, but it does not track muzzle velocity. So first thing I'm going to do down here is go to gun, and I'm going to manually manipulate my muzzle velocity right here, up or down. You can see that I can manually manipulate that guy. If I can get this thing to focus a little bit better. Now, if you have the temperature tables turned on, you will not be able to manually manipulate. I do not recommend that you use the temp tables. They have always sucked for me, so we don't use those. Anyways, moving on. Next thing you need to do is make sure that your environment is auto update is turned off when you're actually using the Kestrel. When you actually want to, when you're actually using in the field, the first time that you go to gather data, you'll actually want to turn it on. So turn auto update to on. Yes. Exit out of there. And then you're going to want to sling this guy around. Just grab it by the cord right here, and you're just going to want to sling it around a little bit. Get some good airflow across the sensor. Sorry, this is a horrible video. I'm standing in my basement in my flip-flops, so it is what it is. Anyway, come back here to environment. Turn it back to off before the sun beats down on it, before you lay it on a hot ground, before you stick it in your pocket. Okay, exit back out of there. You're going to go back up into target. If I want to engage this target over here towards my gun safe, the first thing I'm going to do is bump up here. I'm going to hit this red button, and I'm going to capture direction twice, right? I'm going to hit that button twice. You saw what it did. I hit it first time. Let it focus in. It's saying it's grabbing the target direction. Boom, done. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to roll down the wind. I'm going to look around. I'm going to look around. I'm going to look at the terrain. I'm going to try to decide which way wind is blowing. This is where you separate the amateurs from the experts right here. Look at the terrain, and I plug it in, my Kestrel, where I think wind is coming from. Is it coming from left to right, from right to left, etc.? I'll plug it in here, and I'll plug in the wind speed that I think it is. Okay, exit out of there. Another little tip on wind is you can actually hold this up in the air and let the wind just kind of blow on this this little sock connected. That'll give you a little bit of indication as far as wind direction. There's also some tricks here. Flip this dude open. You can point this into the wind. When you think you've got this oriented in the wind correctly, if you rotate it 90 degrees, it should stop rotating, right? So you'll know that you've got the right wind direction at your location. From there, you'll have to look at the terrain, decide if that's actually a good judgment call. Anyway, rolling back down into here, just a little bit more on Databook. This is how I track muzzle velocities. Roll to the back here. You can see that I actually track this for every single thing that I shoot. 22 long rifle, okay? 375 Shy-Tac. I track it all. Track the density altitude that I shot it in. I track the temperature, and I track the humidity. Okay, density altitude is a combination of temperature, elevation, and humidity. And of that, humidity makes very little difference. Elevation and temperature drive it a lot. Okay, here's what my range card looks like. If I go to the range and I shoot and I collect data, there's a million ways to do this. This is how I do it. I write down the gun, the density altitude, the temperature, the humidity. With this information, I can go back home from the comfort of my living room in my flip-flops, and I can reverse engineer everything that I shot in the field, okay? I can plug in dope. If I just have one hit at 1253 with 11.5 mil dope, I can go back and get all the rest of this data by turning my auto update to off and manually manipulating the environmental conditions to match this, right? So I'll plug in temperature and I'll manually manipulate temperature to the right position. I'll plug in the humidity and I'll put humidity back at 38 degrees. And then I'll actually adjust station pressure until I get the density altitude that I want. Because you'll notice in the Kestrel, you cannot manipulate the density altitude by hand. And the way that I do that, what I just talked about, is I'll roll into here. Again, I'm trying to get this to focus. I'll go back into environment, and right there, auto update is on no. That's what you want to go through and manually manipulate. From there, you can actually change the temperature back to the field conditions. So if I was going to do this right here, 95.3, sorry for this horrible video, change it to 95. Okay, then I'm going to go down to humidity. We want 38%. Rolling to 38%. So I'm going to go down here and check my density altitude. I'm sitting at basically 3,300. I want to be at 3,472. So I will roll up to my station pressure, and I'll actually adjust station pressure up or down until I get to 3,472. Okay, so I'm pretty close right there at 3,475, 3,485. Pretty close right there. So from here, I can roll back out into my ballistics, and I can recreate all of this from the comfort of my living room where I'm not sitting under stress, under a gun, under heat. So that's a good way to track dope. That's a good way to go back and recreate, see what you need so you can actually fill out your data cards. I see people on the internet talking about, well, you really only need to have density altitude, you know, tracked every 1,000 in intervals of every 1,000 because, you know, it's only a 1 mil difference. Okay, let's look at that. I track mine exactly the same way. If you look at this chart here, I track my bullet, I track my muzzle velocity, I track the DA, and I track the temperature. And I'll do a side-by-side comparison. So here we are at 1,500 DA, and here we are at 3,500 DA. At 3,500 DA, I went from 70 degrees to 90. That's a 20-degree delta T. From there, I'm going to start rolling down. I'm going to look at my dope. You can start to see what's happening to your dope, right? At 500 yards, I'm only 0.3 off. Okay, and I roll out 700 yards. Now we're starting to see some difference. So I'm starting to frame in the bumpers here. What's going to make me miss? Is a swing in density altitude of 1,000 going to start to make me miss? Yeah, you bet your butt it's going to make you miss. At 700 yards, you're probably going to be off by 0.2. But I know that because I've started tracking this, right? And I went back and I actually documented it. And I've got my dope here. So you can see the differences that you've got. Out to a mile, you're at 21.8 mils versus 18.2. Anyways, guys, that's just a super quick overview of what I do to track my dope. Hope that you found at least some of this information beneficial. Again, it all starts with going back and tracking your muzzle velocities. I would highly recommend that you make a chart just like this. Keep it with you in your pocket when you go to the matches. The very first thing you're going to do is go in your Kestrel, change your muzzle velocity to match the environmental conditions on hand. Then you're going to go in, you're going to turn that auto update to on, and you're going to sling that Kestrel around a couple, 3 or 4 times, and you're going to get some good airflow on it. Turn the auto update back to off. You're going to set your target direction and wind speed. From there, your ballistics should be lining up perfectly. Good luck.